Okay, we might get started. Thanks everyone for coming today to Senbic's Conversation Circles on staff wellbeing before and after lockdown. I just want to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we are all on. In my case, it's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I want to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and to also acknowledge at this time, noting the movements that are going around the world, that in Australia we have the ongoing tragedy that our First People remain the most disproportionately incarcerated people on the planet. So today we're talking about staff wellbeing before and after lockdown, and I'm really pleased to have Loretta Bolotin from Free to Feed to speak to us today, to share her experience and to ignite our conversation today about well-being and how we're all managing it, and how perhaps to take away a few lessons and insights on our own experience and what we might be able to do better. So with that, I'll hand it over to Loretta to introduce herself and start the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks everyone for showing up and in a small way prioritizing curiosity and well-being this morning. So it's awesome to be here, and it's a nice small group, which means I think that we can keep this fairly conversational, and feel free to at any point to jump off mute and join in the conversation. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to jump in. So let's get started. So today I'd like to have a discussion with you all about my personal evolution and Free to Feed, my organisation's personal evolution to discovering staff wellbeing. So I'm coming at today's conversation from a co-founder, CEO perspective, rather than as a mental health practitioner. So it's very subjective. So forgive me. It might feel like I have to go. I feel that I have to go a little bit back to the early days. So I have to bring you on a little journey to talk about what was happening in the early days of Free to Feed. So we're still fairly new. We've been around for about 5 years, but I've been working in the refugee sector for the last over 10 years now. So both here locally and in the field, so in the Middle East and abroad. So about 5 years ago, we founded Free to Feed. Can I just get a super quick show of hands? Do you know who I'm talking about when I'm talking about Free to Feed, or shall I do a quick intro? Hands up if you want a quick intro. Okay, cool. So Free to Feed is a social enterprise. We're based in Melbourne. I think at the moment I could say that we're maybe almost national, but watch this space for a few weeks' time. So we work with and empower refugees and people seeking asylum through the delivery of shared food experiences. So I guess we look like a little bit like a hospitality / events / experiences company. And through this platform of running experiences and creating really incredible food, that's how we run our employment program. So we work with about 45 people seeking asylum per year, and we run quite a lengthy, immersive 12-month program where people not only work on their sort of practical hands-on skills, but they learn a lot about self-representation and building upon their interpersonal skills to be able to really move forward and represent themselves and share their incredible voices and lived experience. So that's us. So I'm in the CEO role at the moment. As a co-founder, that was a bit of an organic evolution. And I'm leading a team of 15 program staff at the moment. And so that spans not only so head chef and hospitality, but also program staff and sales and marketing. So a diverse group of people working quite closely, in close proximity to people who have faced significant trauma. So in the beginning, so daunted and inspired by my new role and the responsibility and opportunity to create change, I found that for the first few years at Free to Feed, that I was so intensely focused on creating life-changing impact and opportunities for our beneficiaries, so for our participants, so newly arrived refugees, that I viewed my team's psychological well-being as almost secondary. Working on the front line, supporting refugees was thought to be such a great privilege. And the expectation and the culture that I created was about passion and giving. And I think we failed at the time, or I failed at the time, to consider personal professional boundaries. So similar to myself, every wide-eyed, idealistic, optimistic, and big-hearted team member that came on board would hustle and give it their all. The concept of hustle, I don't think I need to break it down for those that work in the social enterprise sector. I think it's a common culture. So my team's personal satisfaction and motivation to help others was perceived by them and myself as a gift, and staff well-being was a luxury. So we dedicated ourselves tirelessly to the cause in restoring safety and enhancing control for the people that we were supporting at Free to Feed. We failed in many ways to provide safety and control for our staff. I guess I'm highlighting this and I'm here today because I found in my later research, which we'll go into a little bit later, that this culture of hustle and passion and altruism was prevalent within social enterprise more broadly. So it was not only that I was a naive founder, but the culture being led by founders more broadly and upheld by leadership across social enterprise that we found in our research was that hustle was a norm. We had limited resources and the team was expected to really put in. And I say this today and without judgment, because for several years, I failed to allocate the resources that team wellbeing necessitates and deserves. And in turn, I think I discovered the great risks in not doing so. A shattering of staff energy, boundaries, and well-being, and the draining of talent, not only from my team, but something that concerns me even more is the great risk of losing talent from the wider humanitarian and social enterprise sector when not considering well-being and allocating the resources. But slowly, once the burnout hit a little close to home for me, and I should, full disclosure, Free to Feed was founded by myself and my husband, Daniel. And so this culture was not only, I guess, was something that came home with us. So once burnout did hit a little close to home for me, and seeing burnout materialize in someone that I very much care about, my partner, I started a process of transition and evolution that has been quite transformative. It's a process that I myself am still going through, and I'm learning, and I'm hungry for learning more about this area. And I think it's been a process of opening up and asking questions. And that has meant that, and I'll go into that a little bit later, but that has meant that we have been in quite a fortunate and remarkable position to cope and to prioritize well-being in this COVID lockdown context, which I feel very, very proud about. So Nick and I, before I go on to talk about some of the key learnings and even later some of the actions and steps that we took, Nick and I thought that it would be useful potentially to have a little chat. Nick, you still feeling this is the right for this group size? Great.
I think so. No, I think it's great, and I think it's a good moment to pause as well.
Yeah.
We're gonna pair you up. And for 5 minutes, just want you to have a little chat with someone else who's here, just to consider the question: what does well-being currently look like at your organisation? And if your social enterprise supports vulnerable people who have higher well-being needs, what are the implications does that have to your approach to staff well-being? So that's the questions. I'll put that in the chat, but I'm just going to pair you up now. And we'll see you in about 5 minutes. And Loretta might drop in just to observe one of those groups, okay? We'll see you in 5 minutes. So Loretta, I'll just type up that question in the chat for everybody.
Yeah, thanks.
And do you want to join one of them in particular?
No, not really.
You want to take a 5-minute break?
Might be good to see what people are talking about. Do you want me to post these questions in the chat?
I'm typing them up right now, sorry. I think people got them. They're pretty clever people. Hey, really great. A nice start.
Thank you. It's almost more intimidating with such a small group.
No, you're doing fab. So I'll post the first one and then...
I've got the second one pasted. I'll post it for you.
Oh, sweet. Thank you. Great. So
awesome. How do I jump in?
Well, I do it for you manually.
Awesome.
So is there anyone in particular you're interested in sort of observing?
Perhaps Sally.
Well, I'll put you in there.
Awesome.
Let me just work out how to do it. Oh. There you are. Sorry, it's thinking.
That's okay.
Oh, I will say, sorry.
We all came back. That's a good start.
Excellent.
Very good sign.
I'll just let people know I am recording the bigger group parts of today's event. If people are not comfortable with that, wave and I will turn it off if that has a chilling effect on the conversation. So I'll leave that to you, but otherwise this just helps people who can't make it today appreciate what perhaps they missed out on. I'll keep going and throw it back to Loretta.
Awesome. Guys, given that we're a nice intimate group, I would love to perhaps have just a couple of people perhaps share with us what well-being looks like at their organisation, or if you manage to tackle that second conundrum of a question, I'd love to hear, just a couple of reflections. Does anyone want to volunteer themselves?
Well, in our group, we were discussing, we were both, our organizations are organizations of one. So we are the directors of the company, the founders of the company, the employees of the company. So the well-being of my company is my well-being. So what it looks like, it's what I normally do to look after myself, which I'm sort of average at, let's say. I know I could do much better, both in terms of exercises, in terms of work-life balance and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But, I don't have responsibility to, tons of employees or whatever, and I don't have responsibility to their well-being. Nevertheless, I'm interested in these sessions because I do a lot of coaching with social enterprises. So it's also, advice. I should say probably, don't do as I do, do as I say.
Thanks, Roberto. And I will a little bit later share a couple of, some of the actions, but also later on I'll ask Nick to circulate some of the resources that I've found very useful as well, just to kind of make it a bit more practical too. Anyone else?
I'll just add to what Roberto said, because I'm the other group of one that we were talking about, but I have a master's in applied positive psychology, which is the science of optimal human flourishing and well-being, and what makes individuals, teams, organisations, in the cases of countries such as Bhutan and New Zealand's possibly going down this way. They don't have a GDP, they have a gross happiness index. And so it's all about, if the country's flourishing and thriving, then the individuals are flourishing and thriving as well. So my revenue has pretty much dropped through the floor. So what I've been doing is running a whole range of presentations for various different groups and associations are aimed around building resilience in uncertain times, which you can only do in uncertain times. You can't build resilience in good times, that type of thing. And it's all drawing on positive psychology and neuroscience and emotional intelligence and that type of thing. So it's more about, I'm okay because I have the tools and I know, and I practice and live this stuff, whereas I know there's a lot of people struggling at the moment. So it's just meeting people where they're at and doing what you can.
Thanks, Jenny. I think in my personal reflection, I've found it to be almost like muscle building. So while you can't necessarily witness your resilience in times when times are a little cruisier, I think building the wellbeing muscle and culture within the organisation probably needs to start in when things are at sort of base level calm. Did anyone find that question of what does wellbeing look like confusing, in that there wasn't maybe not necessarily well-being in your organisation?
I can talk. I can share my experience. So I'm Ollie Barwold. My organisation is actually the Australian Army. So it's actually I'm the wellbeing officer for an infantry battalion based in Melbourne, and with wellbeing for the Army, it's very much a medical classification system. So you're either medically fit and you're good to fight, or you're medically downgraded and you're going to get medically discharged. So, and it very much covers, all the gamuts of soldiers' welfare. So, you've got mental disorders like post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety. You've got shoulder issues, shoulder reconstructions, knee reconstructions. You've got bad backs. You've got all of that sort of type of stuff. But my current welfare focus is I've got 35 guys who are going to Darwin to do a border security operation, which is just normal border security, stopping the boats type of operation that the Australian Army does. But my actual welfare role is to actually support the wives, the girlfriends, the mothers who are stuck at home to make sure that their welfare needs are met. To make sure that they're happy at home, so the guys and the girls who are up in Darwin can go along and do their job. So that's my focus, or that's my perspective on welfare currently. And I'm not a psychologist or anything like that. In fact, I've just been a welfare officer for the past 12 months. So that's, I'm sort of getting myself up to speed, and all of these forums and these ideas, really help me benefit,
Thanks, Lee.
Train me. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, that's a totally different approach, and I hope you will find something useful in today's discussion to take back to your workplace. I would love to have a discussion now about some of the key learnings before we talk about actions. And I would say that they're more of transitions in mindship that I think that have played a key role in moving us towards greater prioritization of wellbeing. So the first one is the transition, and the transition from founder to leader, or that also might be from CEO to leader, or I think it applies to a range of roles, but I'll talk about it from my perspective. So a founder's entire preoccupation and focus is the idea. whereas a leader concerns themselves with the team that will realize the idea. In the early days, the founder is perceived as a permanent, stable position, whereas staff perhaps come and go. However, the shift that we've had and that I've had in my mindset and the mindset of our workplace is that we now view each staff member as completely irreplaceable and indispensable. And so what that means is that we have shifted our focus into ensuring that the knowledge, partnerships, relationships that they have built are retained in not only in our workplace, but in the sector. Because losing team members to exhaustion, it steals expertise, experience, and hope from the communities and the initiatives that need it most. So I believe that our success in solving some of the most complex social issues of our time depends on us valuing the people who are working within this sector. The next learning is the movement from intense hustle to sustainable work. So at Free to Feed, our culture shifted from one of intense hustle and expectation to sustainable work. And the key was better job design. That meant creating achievable job descriptions and being very aware of what we were asking staff members to do. We realized that overambition, unrealistic job descriptions, and unrealistic project timelines would not serve us or our work because we could not sustain that level of intensity and hustle. We must go slow and steady. And I think that this point is particularly important in the context of COVID because so many of our team members and our roles in our organization are changing and shifting. And so remaining very aware of what we are asking each staff member to do and the interrelationship between job design and sustainability and well-being of staff members is a really key thing to keep in our mind over this period of change. So I wanted to talk about the shift that we had from using the term burnout to the term sustainable engagement. Can I have a show of hands who's heard about the term sustainable engagement? A couple? Okay. So there was a whole world of resources. We know this. A whole world of resources and research that tell us about burnout, preventing burnout. What I found, and my colleagues also, is that burnout and these concepts that were tied with it felt like corporate concepts. They didn't resonate with us because our subject matter was not what was making us exhausted. It was energizing us. And we were so determined to support those that needed our help. So through further professional development and some excellent training sessions by Foundation House, highly recommend them, we were introduced to the concept of sustainable engagement and collective sustainability and well-being. So shifting the focus from preventing burnout and withdrawing from the people that we are around to support to building the structures to be able to lean in and out and collectively as a team determine what sustainability looks like. It looks different for all of us. I will share a resource by Vicky Reynolds, who has 12 steps to understanding and actioning sustainable engagement that I hope you will find useful. Another key shift was moving away from privileging our beneficiaries or our participants' well-being above staff well-being to a more measured view. So in the beginning, and I see this in the research that we have done on well-being and social enterprise, is that we put 100% of our resources into the well-being and the programs and the employment support for our participants or our beneficiaries. Our shift was recognizing that employee well-being was equally important and that we needed to back what we were saying up by putting resources into our staff. In the long run, this will enable our staff to help participants anyway, and that making social change happen could actually be broadened to making social change happen in the lives of our team as well as our participants. So really shifting that focus and allocating the appropriate resources. So these realizations were about shifting our culture because before we could move towards action, we needed to first shift our mindset, because anything that we would introduce while we didn't have buy-in and while leadership didn't have buy-in, and we hadn't shifted our mindset, would fail. It would be token. It'd be another token wellbeing initiative. So these key learnings were about building a wellbeing muscle. And I think this wellbeing muscle is one of the most important things that it's allowed us to cope during COVID, and that I would recommend the process of moving towards building that muscle within your team. So before I move into discussing some of the actions and steps that we've taken in building a wellbeing framework, I just wanted to pose a couple of questions for us to explore our own wellbeing muscle. So just a few minutes. And in particular, our approach to the uncertainty that we have seen as of late as a result of lockdown and what we're seeing with COVID. Nick, shall we do a little split? Yeah, so maybe 4 minutes or something like that, a few minutes.
Yeah, so cool. I'm about to put you into 2 rooms, so slightly larger groups. Yep. So
the question that I would like us to focus on, and it does work if you are a little bit more vulnerable and open. And this is a key question that we've been working through at Free to Feed at the moment. But and the question is, what has COVID or lockdown taught you about your approach to coping at work when there is uncertainty? What is your reaction to uncertainty?
Great, and we'll put that in the chat too. So see you in about 5 minutes.
Sorry, put out there.
Welcome back.
I'll flick it to you in the chat, Karina.
Welcome back, everyone. I thought I would just there was a couple of things that came up in our session that I'll name. I guess almost a sense of urgency or a rush to help others around us first. A identification of all of the positives, all of the things that are working as a response to uncertainty. Triggers in unsuspecting places. I thought I would also share a couple of things that came up when we opened this question up to our team, to my team, when we allowed the space for people to share how they were feeling. We had the biggest things was a loss of confidence in their ability to perform their roles, a sense of constant change, an unsureness of expectations, compulsive list writing. And so this is a mix of feelings related to uncertainty and actions, just an overwhelming sense of pressure, guilt. There was actually quite a lot of guilt, which, surprised me. And it wasn't until we asked that we found that. Shame about whether or not people could perform at work, a disconnect, exhaustion, a recognition of resilience, questioning of work identity, hope and hopelessness, feeling grateful or just feeling anxious. So I just wanted to kind of highlight what came up in our team when we asked that question, which to me tells me it's an important question to be having, an important conversation to be having at this time. I'd like to, I'm conscious of time, and so I would like to talk now about a little bit about our overview and what we did next, having set up a bit of the problems and some of our realizations. What we did next really cemented staff wellbeing for us at Free to Feed, and it's a process we're still on, of course. So I will share what we did next in the hope that it will, I guess, in a small way, inspire each of you to take that next step in your workplaces. In 2019, we commissioned Dr. Anne O'Connor, a highly respected leader in trauma-informed organisational practices, as well as a clinical psychologist with a decade experience in working directly with people seeking asylum, to undertake a comprehensive review of our approach to wellbeing, not only for our participants, but for our staff. We wanted to discover best practice of sustainable engagement and good wellbeing practices for staff. We were very curious. The Wellbeing Project was a rigorous analysis and soul searching to understand and establish Free to Feed's approach for wellbeing for our team. I should also note that we actually benchmarked our approach to wellbeing against other organisations in the sector. Some of our best and most respected social enterprises participated. And what we found, unfortunately, that in many cases, social enterprises like ours and bigger expressed quite simply that they did not have enough resources to think about or to support staff wellbeing. As a result of this review, we have been, over the last 6 to 12 months, building our own wellbeing framework. And we're not there yet, but some of the things that we have, some of the interventions that have stuck with us that I'd like to share, and some of these might already be in your workplaces, are, so the first one is to prioritise and to fund a monthly facilitated reflective practice session with an external expert facilitator. A safe and confidential space that was open to staff, all staff. And the key point is that that was an external facilitation. So allowing someone to come in and hold space for us to have these kinds of conversations. One of the keys to sustainable engagement is solidarity and working together to foster our collective sustainability as a team of colleagues or practitioners. So COVID presents a challenge to this sentiment as it breeds isolation. So when many of us were required to work from home, we introduced very quickly a buddy system. We developed a set of rules of engagement for this buddy system. And when we were allowed to see each other, we encouraged team members to connect with their buddies and to go for one safe walk a week together. We appointed a trained counsellor in our team as a staff wellbeing leader and a focal point in our organisation at 2 days per week. She is developing a wellbeing framework. She introduces interventions to test their effectiveness. She advocates fiercely for clear job design. She prepares questionnaires to track our progress, and she is available for individual staff members who may not be coping, and there are many that are not, and that changes week on week. So these are a few of the things that we have already implemented. I think the biggest thing that we did is build that muscle and shift that culture. So when COVID hit, we had the muscle and the mindset in place to bring our team together. We responded to COVID, and one of the best things that we had done is facilitate 2 powerful sessions to create space for our team to see how they were feeling. It was raw. And for me as a leader, to hear about feelings of shame, disconnection, guilt, loss of confidence, demoralization, demotivation was really, really hard, but we leaned into it. So I've mentioned a couple of things that we've introduced, and I will follow up from this session with a whole bunch of resources, and I'm happy to even share, the draft framework and things that we're working on. Nick, I fear that we might not have time for the next questions that we were going to lead into, but I think one of the important things that we were hoping to end on that might be a good place to go to now would be thinking about who is responsible for well-being at your organisation. And have you had, I guess, either in this conversation or in exploring well-being personally, an aha moment that you would like to share, a key realisation with us?